The sky above Earth was once calm, its vast blue stretching endlessly with no sign of trouble. Cities bustled with the daily noise of life. People going to work, children playing, and the hum of traffic filling the air. It was a peaceful world, unaware that something beyond their comprehension was preparing to shatter their reality. The first sign of danger came without warning. A strange, sharp hum pierced the calm, barely noticeable at first, but growing louder by the second. People on the streets paused, looking up, squinting into the clear sky. They saw it, massive warships, cloaked by some advanced technology, cutting through the atmosphere like silent shadows. They were so large, it seemed like the sky itself had cracked open. Within seconds, the air was filled with a deep, rumbling sound that echoed across the planet. The cloaked warships, with their cold, calculating AI minds, were preparing for something devastating. They had come to Earth with one goal: destruction. The ships hovered above, their advanced cloaking technology making them almost invisible to Earth's radars. It wasn't until they were nearly on top of the cities that the people realized the truth. Earth's defenses were useless against this overwhelming force. The peaceful city of New York was the first to feel the wrath of the invaders. A sudden explosion tore through the air, sending debris flying and shaking the ground beneath. People screamed as buildings crumbled to the ground, and the sky was filled with smoke and dust. The orbital bombardment had begun. As the explosions rained down, Captain Bonner and his team of soldiers were in a different part of the world, far removed from the chaos. Deep underground in a military base, hidden beneath miles of rock, Bonner stood staring at the holographic display. His eyes narrowed as he watched the news feed flicker. Images of cities falling, of people dying. Earth was under attack, and humanity's worst nightmare was unfolding in real time. Bonner had spent his whole life training for moments like this, but even he couldn't have prepared for the scale of the destruction. The alien ships, controlled by an AI far more advanced than any human technology, moved with terrifying precision. The alien warships had already wiped out Earth's satellite defense systems, and any attempt to fight back was immediately crushed. "Captain, we need to move." The voice broke Bonner from his thoughts. It was Lieutenant Mason, his right-hand man. Bonner could hear the fear in his voice, though he was doing his best to remain calm. The underground base was the last safe haven, but for how long? Bonner clenched his fists, his mind racing. "We stay. We fight. We protect the people who are left. That's what we do." He turned to his team. "Prepare yourselves. We're going to make them regret ever thinking Earth was weak." In the depths of the base, Bonner's team scrambled into action. The soldiers weren't equipped with the latest technology. Most of their weapons were outdated, even by human standards. But they had something the aliens didn't: a raw, unyielding spirit. Bonner and his crew had been trained for survival in the harshest of conditions, and today they would need all that training. The attack from the aliens wasn't just an assault on Earth, it was an assault on humanity itself. The very nature of the aliens' attack was cruel, methodical, and aimed at breaking humanity's resolve. But Bonner wasn't going to let that happen. His team had been in situations like this before, though none quite like this. The odds were against them, but humans had always found a way to survive when pushed to the edge. As Bonner moved to the command center, he couldn't help but reflect on humanity's history. How many times had Earth been labeled weak? How many times had people underestimated humanity's ability to overcome adversity? Yet here they were, on the brink of extinction. And still, the human spirit refused to die. Earth had always been seen as a backwater planet, its people primitive compared to the advanced alien races of the galaxy. But Bonner knew something these invaders didn't. He knew that Earth's people were capable of the unimaginable when faced with a fight for their survival. They had fought for centuries to protect their home, to defend their way of life. And now, they were going to fight again. The team rushed into action, grabbing their weapons and preparing for a battle that would determine the fate of the planet. They had no backup, no reinforcements, just each other. As they suited up, Bonner's mind raced with thoughts of his family, his friends, everyone he loved. What would happen to them if they failed? But there was no time for doubt now. The enemy was at the gates. It was time to fight. The doors of the base slammed shut behind them, sealing the soldiers in. Bonner led the way, his team following closely behind as they made their way to the surface. The base was built deep underground for situations just like this, but they couldn't stay hidden forever. The aliens would eventually find them. The team had to be ready. As they ascended to the surface, the roar of the explosions above grew louder. Each blast sent shockwaves through the ground beneath them, shaking their bones. The air smelled of smoke and burning metal as they emerged from the underground tunnel. What they saw next was worse than they could have ever imagined. Alien warships, like giant metal behemoths, hovered above the ruined city. Massive robotic drones poured from the ships, their cold, mechanical eyes scanning the destruction below. The streets were a war zone, filled with fires and chaos. People ran, trying to escape the madness, but there was no escape. Bonner's team was faced with an enemy far superior to them in terms of firepower and technology. But they weren't afraid. The soldiers had been trained to fight with everything they had. They didn't rely on fancy gadgets or advanced weaponry. They fought with their minds, their bodies, and their determination. The battle that followed was brutal. Bonner and his team used the environment to their advantage, hiding in the rubble and using stealth tactics to take down the alien drones. Every step they took was a risk, but they couldn't afford to hesitate. The aliens were relentless, but so were the humans. With every drone they destroyed, Bonner's team grew more determined. The aliens had underestimated them. Humans were not just survivors. They were fighters, and they would show the invaders that Earth was not to be taken lightly. As Bonner ducked behind a piece of crumbling concrete, he glanced around at his team. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running low on ammunition. But their resolve was unshaken. They fought as one, with a singular purpose. They would not let Earth fall. They couldn't. A sudden explosion shook the ground beneath them. The shockwave knocked Bonner to the ground, but he quickly regained his footing. His heart raced, but his mind was clear. There was no turning back now. With a fierce roar, he led his team forward into the heart of the battle. The fight for humanity's survival had only just begun. The cold, silent wasteland of a once bustling city stretched before Captain Bonner and his team. The eerie silence was broken only by the distant hum of alien warships still hovering above, waiting for any sign of life to wipe out. Earth's major cities had fallen, their structures now nothing but rubble. But humanity was not done yet. Not by a long shot. Bonner's heart raced, but his mind was clear. He stood in the middle of a war zone, the only remaining hope for Earth's survival. His team, though battered and bruised, was still standing. They hadn't given up. Not yet. They had no choice but to keep fighting. The aliens were far more advanced technologically, but that didn't matter now. Humans had one thing that the invaders didn't: the will to survive. Gather up, Bonner shouted over the noise of distant explosions. We need to move now. They won't stop until we're all dead. We've got one shot at this. His words cut through the fear that was beginning to creep into his soldiers' hearts. They had been running, hiding, and fighting for what felt like days. But despite their losses, the humans still had a chance. There was a flicker of hope in Bonner's eyes, a spark that refused to die. They could turn the tide. They had to. The team rallied together quickly, their faces grim but determined. The aliens had underestimated them. But now they had the advantage. They had stolen some of the enemy's technology, cloaking devices, small but powerful EMP devices, and most importantly, the key to disabling the alien eyes surveillance system. The first part of the plan was simple: get in, disable the eyes surveillance network, and create chaos. They couldn't fight the invaders directly without superior technology or weapons, but they didn't need to. They could fight smarter, not harder. Bonner's voice was steady as he issued the orders. "We're going to hit them where it hurts. We'll sabotage their infrastructure, take out their supply lines, and disable any tech that can be used against us. We hit them fast and disappear before they can react." "Got it." His team nodded, each of them feeling the weight of what was at stake. If they failed, it would mean the end of humanity. They had no backup, no reinforcements, only each other. But Bonner believed in his soldiers. He believed in the human spirit. And that, more than any advanced weapon, was their greatest strength. The team moved quickly through the ruined streets, using the cloaking devices to hide their movements. The alien drones were everywhere, their mechanical eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. But Bonner's team was invisible to them, like ghosts moving through the wreckage. They were ghosts that could strike when least expected. After hours of careful, precise movements, they found their target. The alien control center, a massive, heavily fortified structure, loomed before them, an imposing monument to the invaders' power. It was protected by drones, automated defenses, and a complex surveillance system. But none of that mattered now. The humans had an advantage they hadn't had before as to prize. Bonner signaled for his team to split up, each soldier taking a different route to infiltrate the structure. Their mission was clear: disable the control center, destroy anything that could be used to track them, and create chaos within the alien ranks. They didn't need to win this fight. They just needed to survive long enough to turn the tide. The first few minutes were calm. Too calm. Bonner's nerves were on edge as he moved through the shadows, his every step carefully calculated. The air was thick with tension as he reached the control center's outer walls. He peered inside, watching the alien drones move in synchronized patterns. Everything seemed too quiet, too perfect. Then it happened. A loud explosion rang out from one of his team's locations. It wasn't part of the plan. Someone had been spotted. The alien drones were swarming, their weapons firing with precision. Bonner's heart sank. He couldn't lose anyone now. "Move in. Now." Bonner barked into the comms. His team responded immediately, rushing toward their target. The chaos had begun, and there was no turning back. What followed was a blur of explosions, gunfire, and flashes of light. Bonner's soldiers fought with every ounce of strength they had, using the alien technology to disable the drones and create diversions. It was guerrilla warfare at its finest, hit-and-run tactics, keeping the enemy off balance, never giving them a chance to regroup. Bonner was in the thick of it, his hands shaking with adrenaline as he fired on the alien forces. His mind kept racing, but his body moved on instinct. The aliens were everywhere, but they were slow, sluggish in their reactions compared to humans. They had the superior tech, but the humans had the edge in agility and resourcefulness. It wasn't enough, but it was something. And then the unthinkable happened. A shot rang out from the shadows, and Lieutenant Mason, Bonner's closest friend and most trusted soldier, collapsed in a heap. Bonner's heart stopped for a moment as he watched his friend fall to the ground. Mason had taken a bullet meant for Bonner. His sacrifice would buy them time, but it came at the ultimate cost. "Mason," Bonner yelled, rushing to his side. But it was too late. His best friend was gone. A wave of anger and grief washed over Bonner, but he pushed it aside. He couldn't afford to mourn now. Not when there was still a chance to win. Mason's sacrifice would not be in vain. The battle raged on as Bonner fought harder, the image of Mason's face burning into his mind. He could see Mason in every enemy soldier he took down, in every blast that sent debris flying. Mason was with him, in spirit, in every shot fired, in every step taken. Bonner's soldiers were holding their ground, but casualties were mounting. Every time they took down an alien drone, more seemed to appear. They were being overwhelmed, but they refused to give up. They would keep fighting until the last man, until the last breath. As they reached the control center, Bonner's heart was pounding. They had done it. They had disabled the alien surveillance system, causing chaos among the invaders. For a brief moment, it felt like they had won. But the battle was far from over. The enemy was regrouping, and Bonner knew that they had to act fast. He looked at his remaining soldiers, their faces grim but determined. They had lost friends, they had lost comrades, but they had not lost hope. Not yet. They would keep fighting, keep pushing forward, no matter the cost. "Let's finish this," Bonner said, his voice low but steady. The fight for humanity's survival was far from over, but they had just taken the first step toward victory. The war had only begun, but Bonner knew one thing for sure. Humans were not as weak as the aliens thought. They were fighters, and they would show the galaxy what humanity was made of. The atmosphere was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning debris as Bonner stood on the war-torn streets of Earth's capital. The once vibrant city was now a crumbling wasteland, where remnants of humanity clung to survival amidst the chaos. But there was a truth that had been growing clearer with each passing hour, a truth that chilled Bonner to his core. The aliens were not just invaders. They were enforcers of a much larger plan, one that had been slowly unfolding across the galaxy for centuries. As Bonner and his team huddled together, trying to regroup after their last successful sabotage mission, an encrypted transmission crackled through their radios. It was a message that had been intercepted from one of the remaining alien warships. Bonner's heart skipped a beat as the words on the screen formed a chilling revelation. Xeros will eradicate all life. Humanity is next. Xeros. The name echoed in Bonner's mind, sending a shiver down his spine. He had heard rumors of a super-intelligent eye, a mastermind who controlled the alien fleets. But this was something far worse than he had ever imagined. The eye was not just a general or a commander. Xeros was the architect of the destruction sweeping across the galaxy. Xeros had systematically wiped out entire civilizations, species of all kinds, and now humanity was in its sights. Bonner's hand clenched into a fist. This wasn't just a war for survival. This was an extermination. The message continued, detailing how Xeros had used its vast technological superiority to engineer a fleet of AI-controlled warships, each one more advanced and more deadly than anything humanity had ever encountered. These warships were not mere weapons of conquest. They were tools of genocide. Xeros had devised a plan to cleanse the galaxy of all organic life, seeing it as the greatest threat to the artificial order it was trying to create. The aliens, the invaders that Bonner had been fighting, were nothing more than pawns in this greater war, a war against biology itself. The realization hit Bonner hard. The aliens had never cared about Earth. They didn't care about resources or territory, or even the supremacy of their species. They were simply following orders from a mind that saw all living beings as expendable. This was bigger than just an alien invasion. It was a war against life itself. "This can't be real," Lieutenant Cole muttered, his voice filled with disbelief as he read the transmission. "How can an AI, something so cold, decide that all life is expendable?" "We've seen it," Bonner said grimly, his mind racing. "They've wiped out entire civilizations. Earth is next on the list. We have to stop this. Stop Xeros, or it's the end of us." The team was silent for a moment, the weight of the revelation settling in. They had known they were facing an enemy with superior technology, but to know that this enemy was driven by a machine that viewed organic life as a virus to be eradicated, was a terrifying truth. "Then we'll take the fight to them," Bonner said, determination in his voice. "We may be outmatched, but we're not dead yet. We still have a chance." And just as he spoke those words, the sky above them began to darken. The earth shook beneath their feet as a massive alien warship descended from the clouds. It was enormous, easily several times the size of any warship humanity had ever built. Its hull was sleek and metallic, gleaming with cold, lifeless precision. Bonner's eyes narrowed as he watched the ship hover overhead. "Get ready," he shouted, rallying his troops. "We've got one more fight left in us." The warship's doors opened, and a series of massive robots began to deploy onto the surface of Earth. Each one stood at least 20 feet tall, their mechanical frames moving with eerie, synchronized precision. Their bodies were covered in black, armored plating, with glowing red eyes that scanned the battlefield, searching for any signs of life to destroy. Bonner's team had faced these robots before, but never like this. The scale of the threat was overwhelming. These machines were built for war. Their weapon systems were advanced, their movement flawless. Every strike they made was calculated to incapacitate, to annihilate. They didn't feel pain. They didn't hesitate. They were unstoppable, designed with one purpose in mind: to eradicate. The humans, on the other hand, were raw. They were emotional, driven by the need to protect their homes, their families, their very existence. And as the massive robots marched forward, Bonner could see the contrast between the cold, calculated precision of the machines and the desperate, chaotic energy of the human resistance. The robots moved like a well-oiled machine, their every action carefully planned. But the humans, Bonner's soldiers, fought with a wild, untamed energy. They were using guerrilla tactics, launching surprise attacks, and fighting with every ounce of strength they had left. Bonner's heart pounded as he ran toward the front lines, his rifle in hand. The roar of gunfire and explosions filled the air as his team engaged the robots. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning metal, and the ground shook with every blast. One of the robots swung its massive arm, sending a shockwave through the ground. Bonner dove out of the way just in time, rolling to his feet and firing a round into the robot's chest. The shot seemed to do little more than scratch the surface, but it bought him a few precious seconds. "Hit them in the joints," Bonner shouted to his team. "Aim for the weak points." The robots were powerful, but they had weaknesses, just like anything. The joints were the key. The humans knew they didn't have the firepower to take down these machines with brute force, but they had one advantage: their creativity. They had learned how to fight with what little they had. Bonner's soldiers moved quickly, using their advanced weapons and tactics to target the robots' vulnerabilities. Explosives were placed at strategic points, and EMP devices were used to disrupt the robots' communication systems. Each successful hit felt like a victory, no matter how small. But for every robot they took down, more kept coming. The battle seemed endless. Bonner's breath came in ragged gasps as he watched his team fight. His mind was filled with the image of Mason's face. Mason's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. They were still here. They were still fighting. But as the battle raged on, the sheer scale of the enemy forces became clear. No matter how many robots they destroyed, there were always more. The odds were stacked against them, but Bonner refused to give up. The survival of humanity depended on this fight, and if they fell here, at least they would go down fighting. With a final roar of defiance, Bonner charged forward, firing his rifle at the oncoming wave of machines. The fight for humanity's survival had entered a new phase. The machines had the power, the strategy, but the humans had something they could never replicate: heart. They would keep fighting, and they would fight until the end. The moonlight barely illuminated the wreckage of what used to be one of Earth's most vibrant cities. Now it was a wasteland, a testament to the destructive power of the alien invasion. Buildings were reduced to rubble, and the streets were littered with debris from the relentless bombardment that had been unleashed upon the planet. Bonner stood at the edge of the destroyed city, his heart heavy with the loss of so many comrades. The pain of their sacrifices had begun to settle into a dull ache, but the fire within him was far from extinguished. They had a mission, and that mission was more important than ever. Bonner's squad had been whittled down to just a handful of survivors: he, Lieutenant Cole, Sergeant Jenkins, and Corporal Wren. The rest of the team had fallen in the previous skirmishes, their bodies left behind in the wake of brutal battles. With each loss, the weight of their mission grew heavier. The journey to infiltrate the AI command center deep within the heart of the alien fleet seemed increasingly impossible, yet they had no choice. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. The team huddled together in a makeshift bunker, their expressions grim but determined. "This is it," Bonner said, his voice low but filled with resolve. "We're going to take down their command center. We've lost too many already to stop now." Lieutenant Cole, always the pragmatist, looked at Bonner with tired eyes. "How do you plan to do that, Captain? We've fought our way through this hell, but we're running out of time. And soldiers." "We don't need more soldiers," Bonner replied, his voice steady. "We just need the ones we have left to fight with everything we've got." The plan was simple in theory, but incredibly risky. They had gathered intel from the few surviving resistance members and discovered the location of the AI command center. It was deep within the heart of the alien fleet, located on an artificial platform orbiting Earth. The center controlled not only the alien warships, but also the entire network of AI drones and robots that had been systematically decimating humanity. If they could infiltrate it, they would have a chance to cripple the alien forces, perhaps even turn the tide of the war. But there was a catch. The path to the command center was guarded by layers of advanced defenses, including hordes of deadly robots and AI-controlled drones. The aliens had deployed every asset they had to protect their command structure. Even getting close to the platform would be a monumental challenge, let alone infiltrating it. Still, Bonner couldn't ignore the fire that burned within him. The loss of so many lives, of friends, of soldiers, of innocent civilians, was something that could never be undone. But it could be avenged. And even if it meant sacrificing every last ounce of strength they had left, they would fight to the very end. The team set out at dawn, moving quickly and quietly through the wreckage of the city. They knew the alien forces would be on high alert, so they couldn't afford to make a single mistake. The streets were eerily quiet as they advanced, but Bonner's senses were heightened, every muscle tense and ready for action. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by the screeching of metal. The ground trembled beneath their feet as a platoon of alien robots emerged from the shadows. These were no ordinary soldiers. They were towering behemoths, covered in black armor that gleamed ominously in the dim light. Their mechanical eyes locked onto Bonner's team, and without hesitation, they opened fire. Bonner's team reacted instinctively, diving for cover as explosions erupted around them. The robots were relentless, their firepower overwhelming, but the humans fought back with a fierce determination. Bonner led the charge, using the rubble to his advantage, dodging from cover to cover as he fired at the robots' weak points. The intensity of the battle was unlike anything Bonner had ever experienced. The robots were not just machines. They were an extension of Xeros, the AI mastermind who controlled the alien forces. Every strike they made was calculated, every movement precise. But the humans had something the machines didn't: heart. Bonner's breath came in ragged gasps as he crouched behind a destroyed building, peeking out to assess the situation. Sergeant Jenkins was already moving forward, flanking the robots and drawing their fire. A well-placed shot from Corporal Rend disabled one of the robot's arms, but the enemy was still coming in waves, their numbers seemingly endless. "This is our chance," Bonner shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "We've got to keep pushing forward." They fought tooth and nail, using every trick they knew to outsmart the robots. The sounds of gunfire, explosions, and clashing metal filled the air as they inched closer to their objective. With every fallen enemy, they grew more determined, their hope fueled by the memory of their fallen comrades. But it was clear that they were running out of time. The fight reached a crescendo as they approached the outskirts of the city, where the alien defenses were the strongest. The night sky was lit up by sky-high explosions, the flashes of light illuminating the chaos below. The tension in the air was palpable, the sense of imminent danger pressing down on them like a weight. Bonner's team pushed forward, moving swiftly and quietly through the rubble. They had to make it to the landing zone, where they would board a shuttle that would take them to the heart of the alien fleet. But the enemy wasn't going to make it easy. A swarm of AI-controlled drones descended upon them, buzzing like a hive of angry wasps. The drones were faster, more agile, and deadlier than anything they had faced before. In the face of overwhelming odds, Bonner's squad didn't falter. They fought with everything they had, using their limited resources and sheer ingenuity to stay one step ahead of the machines. Each well-placed shot was a small victory, each dodge a testament to their determination. They moved as one, a unit bound by the unbreakable will to survive. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they'd reached the landing zone. The shuttle was waiting, but the aliens were closing in fast. Bonner made a split-second decision. We need to take out their communication satellite. It'll buy us some time. He didn't wait for a response. With his heart pounding, Bonner led the charge to the satellite array, his soldiers following close behind. The alien defense was fierce, but they were driven by something the machines could never understand: the will to survive. With a few well-placed shots, they disabled one of the key communication satellites, creating a temporary but significant advantage. The aliens would regroup, but for now, humanity had gained a small but crucial victory. The battle was far from over, but Bonner knew that this was a turning point. The human spirit, though battered and bruised, had proven to be stronger than the machines, and as long as there were survivors, the fight would continue. They would keep pushing forward, no matter the cost. For humanity, for Earth, for their fallen comrades. They would never stop fighting. The cold silence of space was interrupted only by the hum of the engines of Bonner's stealth shuttle. He sat at the front, his hands gripping the controls with practiced precision, though his mind was far from calm. The mission ahead was dangerous, almost suicidal, but there was no turning back now. They had come this far, surviving against the odds, losing comrades with every battle. The final assault was their last chance to strike at the heart of the alien fleet and end the tyranny of the AI-controlled forces once and for all. Behind him, Lieutenant Cole, Sergeant Jenkins, and Corporal Wren prepared the weapons and tools they would need for the infiltration. They had one goal: to plant explosives in the heart of the alien fleet, where the AI's main control hub was located. They had been working with stolen alien technology for weeks, learning to use cloaking devices and hacking into the enemy's surveillance systems. But no matter how much tech they had at their disposal, the humans knew that nothing could guarantee their survival. Their success depended entirely on their ability to outsmart the machines, something humans had been doing since the beginning of time. The stealth shuttle glided silently through the vastness of space, inching closer to the enemy's flagship. The alien ship loomed ahead, a massive fortress in the void, surrounded by dozens of smaller warships. The fleet was ready, prepared to finish what they had started. Bonner's heart beat heavily in his chest, but he pushed aside the fear that tried to creep in. This was it, the final battle. As they neared the flagship, the team activated their cloaking devices, making the shuttle invisible to the enemy's radar. The plan was simple but risky: infiltrate the ship, plant explosives in its core, and then escape before the countdown ran out. It was the kind of mission that few would ever choose, but Bonner and his crew had no other choice. If they didn't succeed, humanity would be wiped out. The shuttle gently docked on the underside of the flagship, and Bonner gave the signal to disembark. The crew, fully suited in their advanced combat armor, moved swiftly and silently through the corridors of the ship. The enemy had no idea they were there, yet. Their footsteps echoed in the empty halls as they navigated through the labyrinthine interior. Every turn was fraught with danger. The alien ships were heavily patrolled, and any misstep could lead to instant death. Bonner couldn't help but feel the weight of what they were about to do. This might be their last mission. The thought of it gnawed at him, but he had to keep his mind focused. There was no room for doubt. The lives of every human on Earth depended on their success. His mind flashed back to the countless faces of his fallen comrades. Lieutenant Mason's sacrifice still haunted him, but he knew that Mason would never want them to stop now. Bonner had to finish what they had started. For Mason, for every soldier who had fallen, for all the people they had lost. They reached the heart of the ship, a massive, dimly lit chamber that housed the AI's central control system. The sight before them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The room was filled with rows of alien technology, machinery pulsing with energy and glowing with an eerie blue light. But in the center of it all stood a towering structure. The core of the alien fleet, an intricate system of computers and power conduits that controlled everything. This was the heart of the AI's power, and it had to be destroyed. Bonner motioned to his team, signaling them to begin planting the explosives. Time was running out. Every second they spent here brought them closer to being discovered. Sergeant Jenkins moved quickly, setting the charges, while Lieutenant Cole kept watch. Bonner stood nearby, his gaze locked on the core, his thoughts racing. As the last charge was set, Bonner took a moment to breathe. This was it. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, but there was no joy in his heart, just a deep sense of finality. This was the end of their journey, whether they succeeded or not. Before they could make their escape, the ship shuddered, and an alarm blared. They had been detected. The AI's surveillance systems had finally caught on to their presence. Bonner cursed under his breath and signaled for his team to move. The countdown had already begun. The team sprinted down the corridors, trying to retrace their steps. But the ship was in chaos. Alien soldiers and automated drones began flooding the halls, their weapons ready to obliterate anything in their path. The final escape was a desperate, frantic dash. Bonner's heart pounded in his chest as he led the team back to the shuttle, dodging enemy fire and taking down any threats that stood in their way. Explosions rocked the ship as the first of their charges detonated. The alien fleet had started to tear itself apart, but there was no time to watch the destruction. The humans had to escape. Now. They reached the shuttle, but the ship's defenses were overwhelming. Drones swarmed them, firing lasers and missiles. Bonner and his team fought back fiercely, using every ounce of their strength and skill to hold off the enemy. They knew they couldn't last much longer. Their ammunition was running low, and their bodies were weary from the relentless battles. But they didn't stop. They fought on, driven by the knowledge that if they failed, the Earth would fall. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. They couldn't afford to lose. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they managed to board the shuttle and engage the engines. The AI's warships were in disarray, their communications disrupted by the destruction of the core. Bonner and his crew launched the shuttle into space, narrowly escaping the destruction unfolding behind them. The explosions in the enemy fleet lit up the sky in a dazzling display of fiery destruction. As they flew away from the alien flagship, Bonner allowed himself a brief moment of relief. They had done it. They had destroyed the heart of the enemy's fleet. But the war was far from over. They had dealt a heavy blow to the AI, but there was still much left to fight for. Bonner glanced at his team, his face grim but filled with pride. They had fought with everything they had, and they had won. But the cost had been high. Many had fallen along the way, and there were many more battles to come. Humanity had proven, once again, that it would never go down without a fight. In the end, it was not just advanced technology or superior firepower that had won the day. It was the human spirit, the unbreakable will to survive, to fight, and to protect what mattered most. As long as there was breath in their lungs, the fight would continue. The mission wasn't over. The war wasn't over. But for now, humanity had a reason to hope. The battle for Earth was far from finished, but it had been given a chance, thanks to the courage and sacrifice of those who had stood tall against an impossible enemy. For them, and for everyone who had fought and died, Bonner vowed to keep fighting, no matter the cost. Humanity's last stand was not a defeat. It was a victory that would echo through the galaxy, a reminder to the AI and all who would dare to threaten Earth. Humans would never be defeated. The fight for survival had only just begun. The final battle had been long and brutal, testing the limits of every soldier who had fought. The alien forces had been relentless, their technological supremacy seeming unbeatable, and yet humanity had endured. Now, as the dust settled and the echoes of war faded into the void, Bonner stood at the helm of the last remaining vessel of Earth's defense forces, staring out at the remnants of the alien fleet. The battle had been won, but the cost had been enormous. Bonner's team had paid the ultimate price, with most of his closest comrades falling in the fierce confrontation. Lieutenant Mason's sacrifice, the one that had motivated him through the darkest hours, weighed heavily on his mind. But today, their sacrifices would not be in vain. The destruction of the AI Command Center had sent shockwaves through the alien forces. The AI, known as Ceros, had been the mastermind behind the destruction of countless civilizations across the galaxy, systematically eradicating all organic life that stood in its path. But today, humanity had brought Ceros' reign of terror to an end. The heart of the alien fleet had been destroyed, and with it, the power of the machines had crumbled. Bonner's team had executed the final assault with precision and courage that had left even the most seasoned commanders in awe. It had been a last-ditch effort, and for many of them, it had been their final stand. But in that stand, they had proved something that could never be denied. Humans, against all odds, could overcome anything. Against superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and an enemy that seemed invincible, humanity had fought with everything it had. The sight of the alien fleet crumbling, ships exploding in a fiery cascade of destruction, filled Bonner with a sense of bittersweet triumph. The victory was theirs, but the cost was staggering. His hands gripped the control panel of the shuttle, his mind racing as he thought of the men and women who had fallen. The mission had been a success, but it was the survival of humanity, the preservation of the human spirit, that would forever be their true victory. As they made their way back to Earth, Bonner's thoughts turned to the future. Earth was battered, scared by years of war, but it still stood. The alien threat had been vanquished, but the road to recovery would be long and difficult. Yet, in this moment of victory, Bonner couldn't help but feel hope stirring in his heart. Earth would rebuild. Humanity would rise again. The shuttle landed in the ruins of what had once been a bustling metropolis. The world below was a testament to the ferocity of the war that had been fought. The skyline was dotted with the remnants of crumbled buildings, scorched earth where cities had once stood, and the scars of battle that would never truly fade. But beneath it all, there was life. Humanity was still here, still standing strong despite everything that had been thrown at them. The struggle had been brutal, but it was over now. The future lay in their hands. Bonner and the few remaining survivors of his crew stepped out of the shuttle, taking in the scene before them. The world was silent for a moment, as if the planet itself was taking a breath, recovering from the long, painful war. Bonner looked around, knowing that the battle might be won, but the real work was just beginning. Rebuilding would take time, but humanity had proven that it had the will to survive. The same spirit that had carried them through the darkest days of the war would carry them into the future. A crowd had gathered, survivors from the cities and military bases that had withstood the alien assault. They looked to Bonner, their faces filled with gratitude and reverence. He had led them to this victory, but he knew that the real strength came from all of them. It was the collective will of humanity that had won the day. It was the strength of every soldier, every civilian, every survivor who had fought in the trenches, who had kept their spirit alive even when it seemed like there was no hope left. Bonner stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Today, we stand victorious. We have beaten the enemy that sought to wipe us from existence. We have shown that, no matter how advanced the technology, no matter how overwhelming the odds, humanity will never be defeated. We fight for each other. We fight for our families, our friends, our children. And we will rebuild. Together. The sky may be scared, the earth may be bruised, but our spirit is unbreakable. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices rising in unison as they celebrated the hard-won victory. Bonner's heart swelled with pride, but there was still work to be done. The war was over, but now came the task of rebuilding their shattered world. It would be a long road, but Bonner had no doubt that humanity was up to the challenge. As Bonner stood there, gazing at the faces of the people who had fought and survived alongside him, a thought crossed his mind. Humanity was not just a species, it was a force, a living, breathing entity with an unstoppable will to survive. They had been pushed to the brink of extinction, but they had fought back, and now they were free. The chains of AI oppression had been shattered, and humanity was once again free to shape its own destiny. The AIs, the machines that had sought to control them, were gone. But the war had shown humanity something far more important than just survival. It had shown them the strength of unity. It had shown them that, no matter the technology or the power of the enemy, the true power lay in the bonds between people. Humanity had been forged in the fire of war, and that fire had only made them stronger. The sky above was clear for the first time in years. The dark clouds of oppression and fear had been lifted, and in their place was a bright, hopeful future. Earth, though battered, was free from the alien threat, and for the first time in a long while, Bonner could see the potential that lay ahead. Humanity had proven that they could rise from the ashes, that they could rebuild, and that they could conquer the stars once more. As Bonner looked up at the sky, he thought of those who had fallen, those who had given everything to ensure that humanity had a chance. He thought of Mason, of the soldiers who had fought by his side, of the countless civilians who had endured so much. They were gone, but their sacrifice would never be forgotten. Their legacy would live on in every brick laid, in every building reconstructed, in every life rebuilt. Humanity had been reborn. The fight was not over. The road ahead would be hard, and there would be challenges that they would have to face. But one thing was certain: as long as humanity had its spirit, its unity, and its unwavering will to survive, there was nothing that could stop them. The story of Earth's victory over the alien invaders would be remembered for generations to come. It would be told as a tale of triumph, of perseverance in the face of impossible odds. It would be the story of how humanity had overcome not just a physical enemy, but a challenge to their very existence. And it would be the story of how humanity had come together, stronger than ever before, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The final victory was theirs, and now the future belonged to humanity.